Have you ever been absolutely convinced that if one thing outside of you would finally change, your life would be so much better? If your boss changed, if your spouse changed, if your finances changed, if your health changed, if your schedule changed, if your circumstances changed, then everything would finally fall into place. I have prayed those prayers and I've had those thoughts, and maybe you have too. But over the years, I've discovered something that's both uncomfortable and incredibly freeing. It's because sometimes the biggest obstacle in my life has not been standing in front of me, it's been standing between my ears. Because here's what I've learned: you can change jobs and still take the same fears with you. You can move to a brand new city and still carry the same insecurities. You can start a new relationship and still tell yourself the same old stories. You can change your environment without ever changing your experience. Because wherever you go, guess what? You take you with you. And until we become willing to examine what's happening inside us, we will spend our lives trying to fix the things outside of us. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Welcome to Pilot Light. I am your host, Josh. Most people aren't looking for another self-help podcast. They are looking for a reminder of who they are, a reminder of what really matters, a reminder that their story is not over. So wherever you are listening from, whether you're driving to work or you're standing in front of an open refrigerator hoping dinner will magically introduce itself, or maybe you're sitting in the garage because everyone inside thinks that you're looking for something. Hey, I am so glad you're here today. Let's light the pilot light. One of the hardest lessons I have had to learn is that I can be my own biggest obstacle. That is not easy to admit because it's much easier to blame circumstances, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes circumstances really are hard. Sometimes life really is unfair, and sometimes people really do hurt us. And this isn't about pretending that those things don't matter. It is about recognizing something else. There were seasons where I kept running into the same wall. Different place, different jobs, different situations, same wall. I would overthink, I'd hesitate, I'd carry too much responsibility, I'd worry about disappointing people, I'd wait until everything was perfect before taking action. And eventually, guess what? I had to ask myself something. What if the common denominator isn't everyone else? What if it's me? Now, that wasn't a shame-filled question. It was actually an incredibly hopeful one because, listen, if I was a part of the problem, then maybe by God's grace, I could become part of the solution. So here's the thing. The enemy isn't always on the outside. Sometimes it's the story I've believed about myself, the assumptions that I've stopped questioning, the fears that now I've started to call wisdom, or the excuses that I've renamed responsibility. It wasn't that I wanted a small life. It's that I'd become really good at protecting myself from a big one. That realization didn't discourage me. It actually gave me hope because if the prison was built one thought at a time, then maybe freedom could be built the same way. So here's the big idea. Here's what I've learned. Most people don't sabotage their lives intentionally. They sabotage them automatically through patterns they've repeated for years, through beliefs that they've never ever challenged, through stories they have accepted as truth. When you think about how powerful that is, every day we're telling ourselves something. I'm behind. I'm not enough. I'm too old. I'm too late. I'm just not wired that way. Eventually, those thoughts stop sounding like opinions. They start sounding like identity. And once a story becomes identity, it becomes really difficult to imagine another future. Here's my first point. Your mind protects what it believes. Your brain is an incredible machine, but it has one habit that's both helpful and dangerous. It looks for evidence. If you believe you're always overlooked, you'll notice every time you're overlooked. If you believe that you're bad with money, you'll notice every single financial mistake. If you believe people don't appreciate you, your brain will collect proof. The problem is, it often ignores evidence pointing to the other direction. Your mind becomes a lawyer defending the case you have already decided. And that's why changing your life often begins by questioning those beliefs. Here's my second point. Familiar can feel like truth. Have you ever noticed that just because something is familiar, it starts to feel normal? Maybe you grew up around criticism, or maybe chaos felt normal, or maybe fear became familiar. Maybe carrying everyone else's problems became your identity. Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it was ever meant to define you. Some of the things we've called personality are actually survival strategies, and survival strategies aren't always meant to become lifelong identities. So here's my third point. God always starts with identity. One thing I love about Scripture is that God consistently speaks to who people are becoming, not just who they currently believe they are. Gideon saw a frightened man. God saw a mighty warrior. Moses saw a fugitive, but God saw a deliverer. Peter saw instability. Jesus saw a rock. You notice the pattern there? God doesn't ignore reality. He speaks beyond it, because maybe he sees not only where you are, but who you are becoming. And maybe that's how he wants us to see ourselves too. Can I ask you something? What's the story you've been telling yourself? Not the story you tell everyone else, the one you repeat when you're alone. What sentence keeps showing up? I'm always, I'll never, I'm just. Who gave you that sentence? Is it actually true? Or has it simply become familiar? Because the stories we rehearse eventually become the lives that we live. So here's my challenge to you. This week, I want you to catch one limiting thought, just one. Write it down, and then I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? And is it helpful? And would God say this about me? If the answer is no, stop rehearsing it. Replace it with truth, not positive thinking, truth, because truth has a way of setting people free. So to close this out, one of the greatest gifts God gives us is the ability to grow. You are not trapped by yesterday's thinking. You are not sentenced to yesterday's patterns. You are not defined by yesterday's fears. You can become, not overnight, not instantly, but one thought, one choice, one step at a time. Maybe the biggest battle isn't against your circumstances. Maybe it's for your perspective, because the moment your thinking begins to change, your future begins to change too. Hey, I want to thank you for spending a few moments with me today. If this conversation made you think of someone who's been carrying a story that's holding them back, man, pass the flame. You never know what one conversation will ignite. And one thing, before we go, I want to ask you for 2 quick things. First, if Pilot Light has encouraged you, would you take a moment to follow the podcast and leave a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify? It may seem like a small thing, but it really does help this message reach more people who might need a little light in their life. And secondly, I want to hear from you, because Pilot Light was never meant to be just a podcast. It was meant to be a conversation. So go to the website, mypilotlight.com, and go to the fan page portion and send me a message or leave me a voicemail. Tell me your story. What challenged you? What encouraged you? What did you do differently? Or maybe most importantly, who did you pass the flame to? Maybe you shared an episode with a friend. Maybe you encouraged someone who needed it. Maybe you had a conversation you had been putting off. Maybe you chose to show up differently. I want to hear those stories. Some of them may be even shared on our website or included in future episode, because you never know how your story might light the way for someone else. So remember, a flame was never meant to be kept. It was meant to be passed. So keep passing the flame. And as always, see farther, live deeper, become who you were created to be. You were created to be a fire, not just a flicker. Keep the pilot light on, and I will see you next time.